All right, I think we should make a start. Good morning, everyone. I hope you prepared some coffee for yourself, and during the next 30 minutes, you will be able to enjoy our recent updates and just interesting news community posts that we are going to share with you today. Um, right, so let's start from the news that we shared previous week. Again, I think maybe some of you may missed that, but during the next week there will be Azure Developers Days for .NET engineers. There will be a lot of interesting talks by pretty famous speakers. So now we have like almost finalized the agenda, and you can see what's maybe attractive for you and attend just particular sessions, or then find these sessions on a YouTube, because usually Microsoft, well, they will push this all the content on their YouTube channel. For example, YARP might be interesting for us. We are using it heavily on our project.
It also might be interesting for me because recently I had to use it for one of proof of concepts that I made, and they have not an idea far from ideal documentation as for me. Like, okay, there is a basic example, and do whatever you want with your custom, not existing solution, and yeah.
Scott Hanselman will be also presenter, and usually he doesn't like present particular technology or something like that. He usually does like fancy speeches, fancy presentations, and I think it will be something like that. Well, we can at least recognize it by the title of his topic. Should be interesting. Okay, so that's what we shared previous week and wanted to remind this week. So let's talk about something really new. Two posts were pushed to his personal blog by Andrew Locke. Andrew Locke is a very famous author of .NET books, and he's really strong. I think nowadays he's one of the best authors, and he created two posts related to the evolution of .NET, and I think they will be very useful for people who joined .NET, let's say like 3-4 years ago. They might not have the full picture of what happened with .NET during the previous 10 years or so. And these two posts, one is called Understanding the .NET Ecosystem, the evolution of .NET into .NET 7, and another about .NET Standard. I'll open it in a moment. So these two posts should provide a lot of useful information about the history, and probably it will be like easier to understand all the different namings that Microsoft uses for naming different flavors of .NET. So in this like short summary about this article, Andrew talks here about the period when we had .NET framework, Windows only, centralized monolithic framework, and we had like different flavors, different other .NET implementations. One of them was Xamarin, another was Mona. We also had Unity. So it all was it were like all the different frameworks with their own BCLs, well, with pretty common types, with the same functionality. Well, they tried to be the same at least, but there were some differences. But it was like the situation when we had lots of frameworks. Then Microsoft introduced another framework, which was .NET Core. And the difference comparing to the full framework was that it was like lightweight, it was cross-platform, it was like designed to be working in the cloud. It allowed modular, side-by-side deployment, so a lot of good things. But it was like yet another framework. And then Microsoft started working on the one .NET vision, and starting from .NET 5, well, that happened in .NET 5. They announced that vision, that there should be one .NET, but like different application models. So one .NET, one compiler, like one set of compilers, languages, runtimes, and different application models that we can run on top. For example, desktop applications, web applications, mobile, and so on. So there was such a huge step for Microsoft. So they decided to skip, like they switched from .NET Core naming to .NET, and they skipped fourth version. So after .NET Core 3.1, they released .NET 5, and it took them 2 more iterations to work on .NET and at least come up to this single vision. So it's not vision anymore, it's like reality. Now we have like .NET 7 and all these application models on top. So this is the story about that. And another article is about .NET Standard. Again, people might be confused with .NET. Should they choose a .NET Standard when they design a shared library, or should they choose, let's say, .NET 5, .NET 6? And here Andrew put a history how Microsoft came up to .NET Standard and why we should not use .NET Standard today. So initially we had like different .NET implementations, and there was a necessity to have a shared library that we will be able to use on different .NET implementations. But the problem with that was that we had to stick to the intersection of all these supported platforms. So let's say we want to create a library that should be run on .NET Framework and Windows Phone. It was like another .NET version that days. So we had to create a portable class library. We had to choose .NET Framework, Windows Phone, and then we got a library that has APIs in this intersection. And then it was a big problem because these limitations were like really huge. Then Microsoft released .NET Core, and they changed slightly this idea, and they introduced .NET Standard. They told that each platform should improve itself and start supporting like standards, different versions of standards. And when you create a .NET Standard library, that means you have all the APIs in your library that are declared in this particular version of the standard, because there were several standards. There was .NET Standard 1, 1.1, 1.2, and so on. And each standard like had richer APIs declared. And there were like in the internet, you can probably find something like that, some table, something like that, when you have like standard version and then you have different .NET implementations, and by this table you can understand what this platform should support. So for example, if you create .NET Standard 2.0, then you will be able to run it on .NET Core 2, .NET Framework 4.7.1, Mono, UWP platforms. But then, as we've just discussed, Microsoft released this version of .NET 5, and because starting from the .NET 5, we shouldn't have another like we shouldn't have like multiple .NETs, right? We should have single .NET. So starting from the .NET 5, there is no sense anymore to create .NET standard libraries unless you wanted to support like previous versions like Xamarin, or maybe you need to run on a full framework. And there was another pretty good improvement from Microsoft. They also introduced what they called shim compatibility. Where is it? This is a very nice feature that like allows you to run like libraries that may be not compatible with your platform. And in case if you have all the APIs that you used, then it's likely that everything goes well. But otherwise, if you try to use the API from this library that is not supported by your platform, you will get a runtime exception. This was pretty useful, especially when not a lot of NuGet packages were migrated to .NET Standard. They were mostly on full framework. This helped a lot. Again, very nice history and good justification on what you should choose when you create a shared library nowadays.
I also want to add a bit more about it. So usually Andrew writes, super capacitous articles. They are big, has a lot of details, but specifically these two is fairly easy to understand. It's fairly easy to read. I don't know why. Maybe because all of this information is kind of easy to understand, and there is not a lot of technical details or examples. That is point number one. The second point, I like the second article because the situation with the .NET version, which version should you use during development, .NET Standard, which .NET Standard, .NET, just .NET version, what is, and he'll explain you just maybe in a few words, which version should you use during development. It is super useful, and you can use this article, as a good start to understand what version of .NET should you use in your libraries and your project, and so on. Like it.
Yeah, totally agree. And I think I have an idea why these articles are like so easy to read, because actually it is an extract from his book, ASP.NET Core in Action. So it will be in this book. So I think both these articles will partially at least.
And the book is composed usually from his articles. It's like a loop.
Smart move by him. All right. Let's move on. What else do we have for today? GitHub Copilot chat for Visual Studio 2022.
Yeah, it is very interesting feature. I don't know how soon we'll have this feature in the just usual version Visual Studio, but as now it is as usually it is on preview and it has a limited access, and I suppose it is. I try to get it in my local PC, but unfortunately it is not possible. You have to include yourself in some waiting list, wait something, and pam. But I like the way how it actually works in the Visual Studio. I don't know how useful it will be for developers, but it looks pretty interesting. The way of interaction you can see in this video demonstration in the site. So in the Visual Studio, you will have ability to right click, and after that select GitHub Copilot helper or something like this. And after that, in the small text box, you can ask GitHub Copilot to help you, to explain what is the class about, what is the method about, or write some piece of code, or select some piece of code and fix some bug, or write unit test for this piece of code for the class. As you can see on the right side, it will open you a small, let's call it chat window with a Copilot. And what is interesting, as usually the Copilot contains a context of your communication, and you can continue asking him about some improvements of your code. Looks pretty promising, actually. I like it. I don't know, will I use it in my work, but it will be present in the usual Visual Studio. Definitely, I will try how it works. Right?
Yeah. The only thing that you will have to have Visual Studio, not Visual Studio, but Copilot X subscriptions.
Yeah.
Yeah, which will be probably not for free. But
who knows?
Actually, watching this video, I started thinking that the way how this guy who does the demonstration, it's like a different way of producing the code. It's interesting if this if this becomes reality, then there will be a definitely new way of learning and writing the code. It will be definitely a new thing. So it may be a game changer, I would say.
Yeah, maybe. Also, I know that some companies, for example, a company which we are working on, also considering using some AI internally, like maybe it will be ChatGPT, maybe Copilot. I don't know. They're considering this thing internally.
And by the way, I think this chat is powered by ChatGPT technology. I mean, this Copilot chat.
Yep, maybe.
I think Microsoft said this somewhere. I think it was maybe in his.
It's interesting that recently they introduced Copilot based on something, and then they introduced Copilot X based on ChatGPT and like what they did with
very
previous
interesting, yeah.
Copilot. Did they give
For
it
special group
already?
of people, like man X, you have a
Yeah.
special thing.
I think this usage of X or 10, I'm not sure if maybe this is like from Rome. I mean 10. I don't know.
Interesting
Or
to
it's
check how
X.
many resources it will consume and how well it will work on a pretty big legacy code base. It's
Yeah,
a lot of
it'll be interesting.
spaghetti code and stuff. And like, okay, explain me what it is doing. I have no idea, guy. Ask something.
Okay, just look at this cool marketing, GitHub Copilot X. Very cool marketing.
Series 6.
Yes, exactly. Right. Okay. Another fancy update. It's also a video, right? So
yeah, it's not ad.
Yeah, we need
I
to.
can
Sorry.
let me post like
Volkswagen
full stand-up
didn't pay me
video.
any money. Sorry, guys. They didn't
When
pay
they
me.
go in more
I
detail.
can't skip it. Okay, another one. Sorry.
Not enough.
1 second. Okay, so let's talk about what is it about. So it's .NET Isolator, an experimental package for running .NET code in isolated sandbox by Steve Sanderson.
Yeah, Steve Sanderson is the guy who experiments with the new stuff a lot. Last, and I don't know, at least 5 years before maybe when he introduced Blazor, and one useful output, except for Blazor itself, for .NET ecosystem was an ability to run .NET code in browser using WASM, interop with JavaScript, and they go even deeper and like introduced WebAssembly runtime with .NET application inside it and hosted this runtime inside another .NET application. And because WASI, it's a WebAssembly
system interfaces.
Yeah, system interfaces is a runtime for running of WebAssembly, which provides great isolation capabilities, like a sandbox for your applications. And they used it to interop with from your outside .NET application with .NET application running inside this runtime, and it allows us to like reduce the risks and reduce the area which is accessible for this internal application running inside. For now, it's a highly experimental package, but Alexei recently, it's a different topic. So in this video, he explains how it works high level and shows an example how he can interop with application running inside. Probably it might be part of .NET 9 or something like that, because currently they're investing in interop with WASI runtime, because they see a lot of potential in this area, because at some point it might replace containerization and might change the way how we run our application in containers in cloud, because it also provides an isolation the same way as containers, but without any probably additional costs for it. I posted a link in. No.
So would you like me to post any link or
yeah, I already posted and just in chat. Continued. Yeah, you can check the link in chat. It shows full stand-up with John Galloway, where Steve Sanderson explains maybe the same example, but in a bit more details. So interesting video.
Yeah, very interesting thoughts that it might be a replacement of the containers technology. I didn't thought about that.
I heard it several times when someone discussed WASI capabilities, not really not in the context of .NET, just WASI itself, and I believe .NET might reuse the same later, because there are already a lot of WASI runtimes, like WASM time, all other stuff that you can run your applications the same way. It's like a runtime for .NET, but runtime for WebAssembly. And there are a lot of existing runtimes for WebAssembly already.
Yeah.
What
Very
about
good.
performance? Will it perform very well to replace.
In this video, he explained performance and compares running on his host machine and inside this container. I'd say difference. Yeah, there is a difference, but it's not so significant for such basic operations as he shown on this video.
Yeah, so I think here in this video there is a small benchmark regarding the duration of initialization of the WASI environment, and here Sanderson got the results approximately 8 milliseconds for initializing the runtime. But the execution of the .NET code in this runtime almost has no penalties for the performance. So it's very quick, very quick.
It still has some penalties because you have to serialize and deserialize information that you pass inside and outside of your container. And he uses for now some library, like, I don't remember exact name, like not...
For benchmarking, you mean?
No, not for the benchmarking, but for serialization of data. Like most quickest that we have right now. I don't remember exact name, but yeah.
I see.
I see a lot of interest to this topic in the chat related to comparison of containerization and WASI runtimes.
Yeah. Am I right that
next time?
For now there is no commitment from Microsoft that it will be a kind of product? It's just an experiment right now.
As usual.
Okay. Yeah, but Blazor was an experiment as well, and there was no commitment, but now it's a product that is supported, actively supported and developed by Microsoft.
And still no commitment. no production app. Okay. Let's move on.
Usually Steve is doing some, presentation, and after that they, just watching and understanding the reaction of this thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, one additional topic that I'd like to discuss with you today is another experimental repository that we found recently, and it's also, I believe, heavily based on Blazor functionality for interop with browser, with JavaScript code, and they play with integration of your .NET libraries into Node applications as Node modules. So you can run your .NET module from inside Node application and run any particular code. Like you can, like Alexei recently played with running of Kestrel in a Node application host, and it started.
Yeah. It worked exactly. Yeah. So actually, not sure why Microsoft started. Well, this repository is pushed under Microsoft organization. That means they are going to do something with that. Maybe again, it's yet another experiment. Maybe it will be a kind of product, but we don't know what will be the product. Anyway, it's really interesting thing that you can call you can have full power of .NET from your JavaScript. And yes, as Vladimir mentioned yesterday, I spent some time on trying to run ASP.NET Core from Node.js. That's not sure why somebody might need to do that, but it was possible. This is not ready. This repository not ready for this. I had to do some hacks, but it worked. So full power of ASP.NET Core. I got the access to the ASP.NET Core from the Node.js. The only issues that I had, and well, I'm not sure how to deal with this, is that there are two different worlds. One is C# world with a strongly typing and so on, and another is a scripting language, which is TypeScript or JavaScript. And these two languages has completely different typing systems, and they interrupt between these two worlds. It's not very easy. Microsoft, well, not Microsoft, maintainers of this repository tell that there are some things that how you can do this interrupt, and in most cases everything should work. But in my case, I had the problems of when I tried to call strongly typed method, well, with strong types from JavaScript, because when I tried to pass a particular object, it was passed to the .NET world as just plain as just object type, and .NET was not able to find appropriate method overload for this, because it was like not for object, it was for a kind of strong type. But anyway, very interesting, and
maybe it will enable some customers or companies to use already existing .NET models if they want, and use from .NET applications.
Okay, it's a kind
model
of
is not
silent expansion, right? So
yeah.
First you start using like ASP.NET Core from Node.js, then you start
not
using
exactly
ASP.NET Core without Node.js, right?
Maybe you'd like to use such a great library as Entity Framework Core from your backend,
yeah, for example,
not
yes.
application, and would like to connect with database or Dapper, for example. I'm not sure about additional like performance penalty or doing it, but it's an interesting possibility. And let's see how it goes.
Yeah, sure. We'll keep watching on that. So one more interesting community article that we want to discuss really quickly, because we are almost out of time. This guy, actually, he produces, his name is Derek. He produced very good articles related to architecture. And in this article, he paid attention on a problem that actually may exist on vast majority of the projects. A pretty common situation. You need to save something in a database and then push a message to your message broker in order to, let's say, generate an email or something like that. And these two operations should be atomic operations. So, I mean, if let's say you saved something in a database, then you should push the event. And they're usually here. So developers take this for granted. So you just call to APIs and everything should be fine. In reality, everything may go wrong. So, for example, you may have like your database unavailable temporary, or message broker is down, or something wrong with your permissions. And Derek here describes several approaches that you can use. He talks about fallback scenarios when, for example, when you, let's say, you try to push a message to the broker and then you failed for some reasons, you can store your message into durable storage, let's say DynamoDB or so. Then there might be a Lambda that is responsible for retriggering this message and pushing it to message broker. Or another interesting pattern, I really liked it, outbox pattern. This is when you store the record in a database, then you also push a message into the same database with a state that not published, and then there is a separate process that tries to push the message. It reads the message from the database and tries to push. And workflows pattern, probably this is where you need like some additional libraries. Anyway, very interesting article, and I personally think that vast majority of the projects just doesn't care about that, but in reality it may be a problem. If you don't want to lose your messages or your records in a database, you need to apply one of these or similar patterns. Okay, one more minute, just a small bonus. Yet another article from Microsoft about performance gains when you migrate from like a lower version of .NET to like higher version, this time from .NET 5 to .NET 7. That this migration was made by Bing team, and they describe here in this article some performance improvements. They are not so sensitive as, for example, when they did the migration from .NET Framework to .NET 5, but still some potential improvements, some performance gains are noticeable for sure. And they've already started migrating to .NET 8. Probably they like just to get this performance after the migration. Okay. That's it, guys.
So quick.
Yeah, I think
Just
this is
time.
important. Yeah, I think exactly. Yeah, I think this is really important to stick to our time frame. I see Alexander just raised the hand, and probably he lowered his hand. Okay, guys, so let's not waste our and your time and wrap up the call. Thanks, everyone. I hope you enjoyed this session, and we will see you in 2 weeks.